Greetings, fellow Thulians. It has been a while. Thistle has, of course, been adventuring all this time, and as you can tell, he's even tougher than he used to be. And he has gained some wealth. He has 200 gold pieces by now. Being an adventurer is profitable for sure. And he has decided to build a settlement. And he has set his eyes on this hill hex. He has cleared all these hexes surrounding the hill hex, as well as the hill hex. In other words, he's going to found a realm. And the first thing he needs to do is, of course, to build his first settlement. And as you can tell here, he has to invest when he does so. In a hill hex, it will cost 2 times as much as normally, but 5 gold pieces times 2d6 times 2. So what you read from this is that this is an incredibly attractive place, and people really would like to live there because it's very nice, and everything that people would like to have in a settlement is probably there, as the dice can tell you. And 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 5 is 20, and therefore he spends 20 of his gold pieces to build a settlement. And this will take about 1 month. We cheat a little bit and fast forward 1 month, meaning the settlement has been built, and there are by default 20 halflings living there, in addition to Thistle himself, of course. These 20 will come from Thistle. So I, as a game master, will take some notes here and remind myself that I have to remove 20 individuals from the settlements in Thistle. Being incredibly artistic, I naturally draw his little realm on a sheet of paper. And as you can tell, it starts out in this single hex. Now, before you actually do anything, the best thing you do when you found a settlement is to actually give it a name. And this is a hill hex surrounded by mountains and open hexes. So we are going to use some of these words from this list at the end of the book. We can call it something, a combination of this, maybe actually also combine it with some hill mountain name. Let's call it Holtdal. Now, if you prefer the English name, you can of course just use the translation and call it Wooded Knoll Valley. That's his little settlement. So what happens after it has been founded? The Game Master will use a campaign turn quick reference here to find out what he should do. And the first thing he should do is, of course, to find the monthly environmental factor. And of course, there are no factions here or anything, so we just ignore that. The high festivals should be noted on a sheet of paper. And in week 1, he will determine influence. How does this little hamlet influence the hexes surrounding it? And frankly, the first month when you have 20 individuals, you really cannot afford to influence anything surrounding it. They basically just live and work and exploit this one single hex. Still, in the first week, we determine whether or not he should build any things there. Thistle also decides to hire a geologist to explore the hex to see if there are any special resources there. Every week you should also determine whether or not there is any random encounter there. But there isn't going to be any, because all the hexes surrounding this little hamlet are still just cleared hexes. Second week we determine whether or not there is any large-scale trade with other settlements, and of course there isn't, there are no other there. We check if there are any additional resources or income from them. Nope. Is there any treason? No, actually, Thistle is administering the hamlet and his realm himself right now. The third week, we check his skill to see whether or not he does a good job in predicting problems and preparing for them. So we cast a d20, we roll a 10, which is just a semi-success, meaning there are no adjustments to income or anything there. We calculate the food production to see how much food he manages to harvest. And even though his settlement doesn't really need any food resources, because if you have fewer than 50, you can just survive by foraging. But you can also stock up on food resources in case of a siege, which of course, if you don't have a walled-in settlement, there is just going to be a normal battle anyway, but for the future. He then is to determine the income he will get from the hex. And if we don't know, you can actually just look it up here. It says page 11, 12 and 13. So let's do that. Page 11. From a hill hex he will get the 12 silver pieces. But this is the first month, so he doesn't get anything this month regardless. Because you have to set up your industries, build whatever you have to build and so forth, and this is done by the NPCs automatically without any micromanagement. So you just assume that the first month you don't get any income because the people working there are busy setting up their industries and such. He doesn't really have to pay any wages because he's doing the job of administering the settlement himself. Will there be any revolts? And let's go to page 11 to check out. He doesn't have any slaves, so they're not going to revolt. But is there a chance for a revolt? Because people might be really unhappy with him and want to replace him as the administrator. As you remember, he didn't do a very good job. He didn't administer didn't score a critical success or a success when he administered the settlement. He did just semi-well, so there is actually a chance that people will revolt. A 1 in 20. And nope, nobody is going to revolt, thankfully. Tax income, nothing. Not least because halflings only pay yearly taxes. Policing, check if the garrison has caught any enemy agents. He doesn't even have a garrison, and we already know there are no agents there. So the game master is probably just going to throw a dice, roll a dice to pretend if he's checking. And now the perhaps interesting part: settlement growth. When administering the settlement, he did a semi-successful job, and that's a +0 to settlement population. He's not a human, so that he won't get any settlers. But is there any natural growth? Perhaps some of these people living there were already pregnant when they came there. And indeed, his hamlet will grow by +1. We take note of that for now, for natural growth. Modified, of course, by his race, which is ×1. Now, the problem for Thistle is that he's a low-level character who hasn't really reached his maximum attainable level, meaning people don't really have faith in him. He hasn't proven himself to be very skilled and successful. So it actually has a -1 modification to the settlement because of this. We note a -1 for that. Food, it's not going to influence this at all the first month. No temple. And ruler investment. Now let's backpedal a little bit and pretend that he actually spent 1 gold piece to attract more settlers. For example, he built a nice cozy flower decoration, something like that. I don't know. So we spend 1 gold piece for that. As you can tell from this means that these 6 new settlers will arrive. Not bad. 4. Starvation, they're not going to starve. It's not a city, so a lack of trade doesn't matter. He doesn't suffer from a lack of security. No guilds present. And finally, we check for a natural event, which is basically a 1% chance that something bad happens for a hamlet. Nothing. So we sum it up. +1 -1 +4 equals, of course, +4. And his settlement grew by 4 individuals this month. And the next month he's going to have tax income, he's going to gain some food, and when he gains food he will have excess food because it's a hamlet, he don't even need any food resources, And because of that, you're going to see accelerated growth.